Welcome back to the Chanel, Rare Coins History, simply 25 cents, something you use for parking meters, vending machines, or maybe just tossed into a jar at the end of the day. But what if I told you that one of those ordinary-looking coins could actually be a hidden treasure worth more than you could ever imagine? That's exactly the case with certain United States of America Washington quarter dollars from the year 1970 with specific mint marks that have caught the attention of collectors and treasure hunters around the world. This is not just any coin story, it's about how a small piece of metal, weighing less than 6 grams, can change someone's life forever if found in the right condition and with the right features. The Washington quarter has a long and fascinating history. First issued in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, it quickly became one of the most widely recognized coins in circulation. By the time we reached the 1970 issue, the coin had already gone through decades of minting, transitioning from silver compositions to copper-nickel clad, and being struck at different mints across the country, such as Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint mark tells its own story, and for collectors, those tiny letters can mean the difference between a regular coin worth face value and one that could be worth thousands upon thousands of dollars. The year 1970 in particular is known for some very special Washington quarters that contain rare varieties and minting errors. Errors are what often bring incredible value to coins. A misstrike, a double die, or even the wrong planchet being used can turn an ordinary quarter into something extremely rare and highly collectible. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that looks like every other quarter you've ever seen, but upon closer inspection, it reveals unique characteristics that make it one of a kind. That is exactly why coin collectors constantly check their change, because treasures can truly be hiding in plain sight. The 1970 Washington quarters are especially popular because of the transition in coin production during that time. The United States Mint was experimenting and perfecting its clad coinage, and that led to a number of interesting outcomes. Some coins from this year feature double dies, while others have unusual minting flaws that make them very desirable. The mint mark, a tiny letter stamped on the coin, can completely alter its value. Whether it's a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, those small details have a big impact on collectors who search tirelessly for the rarest examples. Collectors also prize condition above all else. A coin that is worn down from years of circulation may still have some collector interest if it has a rare error, but the highest values are always found in those coins that remain in pristine condition. Mint state examples, those that look nearly as perfect as the day they were struck, are what send prices soaring at auctions. For the 1970 Washington quarter dollar, a mint-marked piece in exceptional condition, especially with a recognized variety or error, is something that could set records. These are the coins that go from pocket change to headline news at major coin auctions. It's always fascinating to think about how coins travel. A quarter minted in 1970 could have been used by countless people over the decades, for groceries, movie tickets, bus rides, or even arcade games. Yet through all of that everyday use, one extraordinary coin might have survived, waiting for someone to notice its hidden value. That's what makes coin collecting so exciting. It combines history, luck, and the thrill of discovery. Every time you look at your spare change, you could be looking at a tiny piece of treasure with a story that has lasted for generations. Now here's where it gets truly incredible. Among these Washington quarter dollars from 1970, certain mint-marked examples in the right condition and with the right characteristics have shocked the collecting world with their auction results. These coins, though small, have achieved values that are life-changing. You may think it's just 25 cents, but collectors see it as a rare artifact that represents both American history and the art of minting. Today we're diving into one such coin that has left collectors buzzing with excitement, the United States of America Washington quarter dollar from the year 1966, a coin that at first glance looks like any other, but in rare cases can be worth far more than you could ever imagine. The Washington quarter itself is a piece of American history. First introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, it quickly became an iconic coin in circulation. For decades, it carried the image of the first president on the obverse, while the familiar eagle perched on arrows with olive branches appeared on the reverse. By the time we reach 1966, the Washington quarter had already seen an important change. Just the year before, in 1965, the United States Mint stopped making quarters out of 90% silver and moved to a clad composition of copper and nickel. That means the 1966 Washington quarter was part of this brand new era of coinage, and collectors pay special attention to coins from these transitional years because they can sometimes reveal unusual varieties and mistakes made at the mint. During the mid-1960s, coin collecting had exploded in popularity, and demand for coins was so high that the mint even decided not to include mint marks on coins for several years, including 1965, 1966, and 1967. This was meant to discourage people from hoarding coins by mint location, but for collectors, it makes coins from these years all the more fascinating. Without mint marks, the details of strike quality, errors, and condition became the main ways to tell which coins might be truly special. And with the rush of production to meet public demand, mistakes were bound to happen. This is where the story of the 1966 Washington quarter becomes truly exciting. Certain examples of this coin show unique errors and varieties that make them extremely rare and highly valuable today. Double strikes, off-center strikes, and planchet errors are all possibilities from this era, and collectors are constantly on the lookout for these hidden gems. Even a small difference, like doubling on the date or lettering, can transform a coin from ordinary pocket change into a collector's prize worth thousands. Condition also plays a massive role in determining value. Most quarters from 1966 circulated heavily, passing from hand to hand for decades. They were used in laundromats, toll booths, diners, and arcades, so finding one in pristine condition is very difficult. But when a 1966 Washington quarter is discovered in mint state, shiny, sharp, and nearly flawless, it immediately attracts attention at auctions. Combine this perfect condition with a rare error or variety, and suddenly you're looking at a coin that is not just a curiosity but a true treasure. Think about it, this coin has been around for almost 60 years. It's lived through generations, tucked away in pockets, purses, cash registers, and jars. And yet, one special quarter from this very year could hold enough value to change someone's life. This is why collectors never overlook even the most ordinary-seeming coins. Because buried in that loose change could be something that few people in the world will ever get the chance to own. Collectors love the 1966 quarter not just for its potential value but also for the history it represents. This was a period when America was transitioning its coinage, when silver was disappearing from circulation, and when minting practices were shifting dramatically to meet public demand. The coins from this year are a snapshot of that important change, and rare survivors from the mintage carry not just financial worth but also historical significance. And now, the part that makes this story truly astonishing. While most Washington quarters from 1966 are only worth their face value of 25 cents, there are examples, rare and remarkable, that have stunned collectors at auction. One special Washington quarter dollar from 1966, in exceptional condition and with the right attributes, was valued at an incredible $70,000 in words. Today, just an ordinary piece of change can hide a secret that most people overlook. Among the countless Washington quarters that have been minted and spent across the United States, a few hold extraordinary value, and one of the most fascinating examples comes from the year 1980. The Washington quarter dollar from this year is a coin that at first glance looks like every other quarter you've ever used at a grocery store or tossed into a vending machine. But if you take a closer look, and especially if you know what rare characteristics to look for, this simple 25-cent piece could turn out to be something worth more than you ever imagined. Let's first step back and understand where the Washington quarter stood by 1980. Originally introduced in 1932 to celebrate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the coin quickly became a cornerstone of U.S. currency. For decades, it carried the image of Washington on the obverse and the proud eagle on the reverse, and by the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was already a beloved and widely circulated coin. But there's something important about the 1980 series. Unlike the years of 1965 through 1967, when the mint removed mint marks to discourage coin hoarding, the 1980 quarters once again bore their mint marks proudly. This means you can find 1980 quarters with a P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or an S for San Francisco. Each of these mint marks tells its own story, and for collectors, some of them can be far rarer than others. By 1980, the US quarter was no longer made of silver, it was fully copper-nickel clad, a change that had begun back in 1965. That makes silver errors from the 1980s extremely interesting and highly sought after. Occasionally, mistakes happened at the mint, and planchets meant for different coins were struck with the quarter design. Imagine discovering a 1980 Washington quarter struck on a leftover silver planchet, or on a smaller or larger blank. It's these rare errors that drive values into unbelievable territory, but it's not just minting errors that collectors watch for. Condition plays a massive role in determining value. Most 1980 quarters have lived hard lives, rattling around in cash registers, pocket change, and parking meters for decades. They're scratched, worn, and dull from years of circulation. But when one surfaces in nearly flawless condition, what collectors call mint state or even higher, it becomes something very special. The sharper the detail on Washington's hair, the cleaner the fields of the coin, and the brighter the luster, the more collectors will pay. Now, let's talk about varieties. With millions of coins produced at multiple mints, there are always subtle differences that make some coins more desirable. A double die, where the design appears doubled due to a misalignment in the minting process, can make a 1980 quarter incredibly valuable. Off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, these are all possibilities that can take a coin from being worth just 25 cents to being worth thousands. Collectors are constantly on the lookout for these quirks, and they can often be spotted with a careful eye and a magnifying glass. Think about the significance of holding one of these rare treasures. A coin minted over 40 years ago, passed through countless hands, maybe spent at a gas station or used in an arcade, yet somehow preserved in such remarkable condition that today it has the potential to be a showpiece in a serious collection. That's the thrill of coin collecting. You never truly know when the ordinary can reveal itself to be extraordinary. The Washington quarter has always been a workhorse coin in the American economy, but the 1980 edition holds a special place because of its connection to the modern minting era. It represents a time when the mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with the economy, yet even in the midst of that massive production, mistakes slipped through and pristine examples survived. Those rare survivors are the coins collectors dream about, the ones they spend years searching for, the ones that light up auctions when they finally appear. Today, look closely at the year 1974, we find a coin that carries both historical weight and incredible value for collectors. At first sight, the 1974 Washington quarter doesn't appear to be much different from the millions of quarters you see every single day. It has the familiar portrait of George Washington on the front, the majestic eagle on the reverse, and a small mint mark indicating where it was made. But as with so many coins, the value lies in the details, and those details can mean the difference between just 25 cents and a fortune. The Washington quarter had already been circulating for more than 4 decades by the time the 1974 series was struck. First introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, this coin became a permanent part of American currency due to its popularity. By 1974, the coin had already gone through major changes. The most important shift happened in 1965, when silver was removed from quarters and replaced with a copper-nickel-clad composition. This change meant that 1974 quarters, like others after 1965, were no longer made of silver. But collectors know that sometimes, mistakes at the US Mint create coins that were never supposed to exist, and that's where the excitement begins. The 1974 quarter was struck at 3 different locations: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with a D mint mark, and San Francisco with an S mint mark, which was used primarily for proof coins. While most of these pieces went into circulation and lived ordinary lives in pockets and purses across the country, a small number stood out for extraordinary reasons. Minting errors, unusual planchets, and high-grade conditions have made some of these coins worth thousands, and in a rare case, tens of thousands. Imagine a 1974 Washington quarter that was struck on the wrong metal planchet, like a leftover silver blank that shouldn't have been used, or even a planchet meant for another denomination. These off-metal errors are incredibly rare and almost never seen, which is why collectors compete so fiercely for them when they surface at auctions. Add to that the possibility of double die errors, where the design shows doubling from a misalignment during minting, or off-center strikes that leave part of the coin blank, and you begin to see why the 1974 quarter is not just an ordinary coin. Condition also plays a massive role in value. The vast majority of 1974 quarters have been through decades of heavy circulation. They're scratched, worn down, and discolored from years of use. But when one survives in pristine condition, untouched by time, with sharp details on Washington's hair, a strong eagle on the reverse, and beautiful original luster, that's when collectors take notice. Coins graded at the highest mint state levels, like MS 67 or MS 68, are so scarce that they command enormous premiums. It's the combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand that pushes certain 1974 quarters into the spotlight. Now think about the thrill of holding such a coin in your hand. To the average person, it's just a quarter you might toss into a parking meter or use in a vending machine. But for the trained eye of a collector, it could be a hidden gem worth more than a car, more than a piece of jewelry, sometimes even more than a house. That's the incredible reality of coin collecting. Hidden treasures are out there, waiting to be discovered in the most ordinary places. The Washington quarter is more than just a piece of currency. It's a slice of American history. Every year tells a different story, and the 1974 edition reflects the country's transition into a fully clad coinage era while still carrying the possibility of rare minting mistakes. It shows us how even in times of mass production, uniqueness can still be found. So the next time you come across a quarter from 1974, take a moment to look at it closely. Check the mint mark, examine its condition, and keep an eye out for anything unusual in the strike. Today tells a story of history, craftsmanship, and sometimes hidden treasures waiting to be uncovered. The 1973 Washington quarter dollar is one of those coins that at first glance seems ordinary, something you might have tossed into a soda machine decades ago without a second thought. Yet for collectors, this year carries an extraordinary allure, with certain coins becoming incredibly valuable due to rarity, condition, and unique minting errors. Today we will dive deep into the fascinating details of the 1973 Washington quarter dollar, exploring why this simple 25-cent piece has caught the attention of numismatists across the world. The design of the Washington quarter had already been circulating for more than 40 years by 1973. Originally introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, it quickly became a permanent fixture in U.S. currency because of its popularity. By the time the 1973 quarters were struck, America had already undergone a major change in coinage, the removal of silver in 1965. Instead of being struck in 90% silver, the coins were now minted in a copper-nickel-clad composition. This means that every quarter you see from 1973 is made of a copper core with layers of nickel on the outside, giving it that silvery appearance but without the precious metal content. Even so, some of these quarters would go on to become extremely valuable. The 1973 quarters were struck at multiple mints: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with a D, and San Francisco with an S, used for proof coins. Proof coins were not made for circulation but specifically for collectors, and these were struck with higher detail and mirror-like surfaces. While millions upon millions of 1973 quarters were produced for circulation, what makes some of them so rare and valuable are the factors of condition, mint errors, and sheer survival in pristine states. Condition is one of the most critical aspects. Most coins from 1973 have been passed around endlessly for over 50 years, accumulating scratches, dings, and heavy wear. A coin like that may still hold some minor value for collectors, but it's the coins that somehow survived in near-perfect condition that command the highest prices. High-grade mint state coins with brilliant luster and razor-sharp details are few and far between. Imagine a 1973 quarter with every strand of Washington's hair clearly visible, the eagle's feathers perfectly struck, and no distracting marks across the surface. Those kinds of coins are the ones collectors dream about, but beyond condition, mint errors are what truly set certain 1973 quarters apart. Sometimes mistakes happen at the mint, and instead of being destroyed, a handful of those error coins escape into circulation. A double die error, for example, where the design appears doubled on parts of the coin, is incredibly rare and desirable. There are also off-center strikes, where the image of Washington is not centered correctly, leaving a blank crescent on one side of the coin. And then there are off-metal errors, coins accidentally struck on the wrong type of blank planchet, such as a leftover piece meant for a different denomination. These types of minting mistakes can catapult a quarter's value from face value into the thousands. Another fascinating aspect of the 1973 quarters is the role of proof coins. Proofs were specially made for collectors, often kept safe in protective cases, which is why many still exist in pristine condition today. However, even among proofs, ultra-high-grade examples with perfect mirrored fields and flawless strikes are incredibly hard to find, and when they appear at auction, they fetch strong prices. The beauty of coin collecting is the thrill of the hunt. Imagine looking through a handful of quarters from your pocket change and spotting a 1973 piece. To most people, it's just another coin worth 25 cents, but for those who know what to look for, it could be the beginning of an incredible discovery. Every detail matters: the mint mark, the strike quality, and even the tiniest flaws. This is why collectors are passionate. They know that treasures can be hiding in plain sight. The Washington $quarter of 1973 captures an era in American coinage history, a time when the nation had fully transitioned away from silver, and the mint was producing coins in massive numbers. Yet despite that mass production, certain coins stand out as true rarities, commanding values that few could imagine. And that is what makes coin collecting such an exciting pursuit, finding the extraordinary within the ordinary. So the next time you come across a Washington quarter from 1973, don't just glance at it and toss it aside. Look closely. Inspect the mint mark, check for unusual details, and pay attention to its overall condition. You never know, you might just be holding one of the rarest pieces from that year. Because while the majority of 1973 quarters remain worth just a quarter, one of these coins has been valued at an astonishing $82,000 in words.